Hello, folks. I am Jim the Eternal, and I am thrilled to present this race for you folks. We've got some wonderful racers here. We have James KT on the left side, KewlioMZX on the right, and this is going to be a heck of a race. The Timespinner Randomizer tournament has been going on for a couple of days now. This is, I believe, the 7th match. Things are a little bit all over in terms of bracket, but this particular match is part of the round 1 bracket. This is a double elimination tournament, so the winner of this will go on to face one of the people who got seeded into a bye slot, and the loser will go down into the loser's bracket to face some of the other people. The timer should be going, so we should be seeing our racers start any second. There I go. So, welcome to the race. We're going to see our racers getting some initial orbs here. Gun orb minus, not the best of starts. The Timespinner Randomizer has a damage randomizer built into it. So what we're seeing here is the minus indicating that the orb is half damage compared to what it would usually be. And they're also getting a starting spell, the Chaos Blades, which I think was also minus, which is, well, we'll do what we can with what we have. Our racers are going to do their best, I am sure. But this is a pretty low damage start. We'll see what items come up and whether there will be some things coming up to replace it. I'm going to start off, as usual, tagging the warp on the left side. So let's talk about some of the differences between this year's races and last year's races. We've got what's called the Unchained Keys flag, which means that our racers are both starting with nothing particularly good so far. Starting with the Twin Pyramid Keys, which is the warp functionality. So any warp room that they've seen, they can access. And then there are also new items in the game that will give them access to other time periods, give them a access to a free warp either in the modern time period or the ancient pyramid. The other very, very neat change from last year is the Enter Sandman flag, which means that instead of needing to make it all the way to the lab in the present in order to get to the ancient pyramid, there is the ability to warp into the ancient pyramid whenever you have access to it, whenever you find the appropriate pyramid key. But you still need the 5 pieces of the time spinner in order to fight the final boss. So this means that the routing is going to be wide open. Right now, we're seeing not a lot of progression, so our runners are going to be mostly heading off in the same directions. This is kind of the first opportunity for divergence here. There's the question of whether or not James or Coolio are going to head down to the upper caves of banishment and check the few checks over there. Some people like doing this, some people don't like doing this. The downside of this is you leave a couple of underwater checks that you'll have to come and backtrack for. But it does give you access to some checks that some people might not have. Looks like James is just coming down to grab the warp, as opposed to actually doing the checks. Yep. Just grabbing the warp room for quicker access to this area later on. Coolio not bothering. Coolio just heading straight up to the top. So when James needs to backtrack to this area, James will do it quicker. But Coolio, for now, is very slightly ahead, as they both proceed into the castle keep, starting with the ramparts here. And again, we should see them mostly following in each other's footsteps for now. There's not a whole lot of room for divergence until we start seeing some initial progression. Some good use of the Chaos Blades on Coolio's side. The spells generally are very powerful. Sometimes it's a little bit difficult to figure out how to use them. But a lot of the fun in this game is in the incredible variety in the combat, the different kinds of orbs that are available, all of the spells. Coolio, looks like Coolio didn't go down to the moat. James, we see, is lowering the drawbridge to get the 2 checks underneath the moat. Coolio just heading into the castle. An understandable decision. The moat checks are kind of slow, but we'll see whether or not this pays off for one or the other of the racers. Elevator keycard. Elevator keycard could be pretty relevant to the progression in this seed. It is something that's not going to matter immediately, but once our racers get present access, the elevator keycard unlocks quite a few checks in the Varndegroth towers. So this may end up punishing Keywlio. Either he'll have to backtrack for it, or it might just take him a while to come back to that area. This is an easy problem to run into. Combat not going well for Keywlio. Yikes. That's a really unfortunate death. Oh, but he grabbed the save in the ramparts, so that's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. This is a save that many runners would skip just for the sake of time saves. And fortunately for Keywlio, he didn't skip it. So he's going back a couple of screens as opposed to losing whole minutes here. Yeah, trying to jump over the Hammer Giantess is difficult. It is possible, but there's not a lot of room to do it. I think for the most part, if people are going to damage boost through the Giantess, you just kind of walk into her. But yeah, there is a very specific arc. It's made a lot easier. Ah, there you go. Used to be, we had, so last year we had the Teleria attachment as part of the initial loadout. So everybody had the dash, the horizontal movement tech. With these tournament settings, that is not immediately accessible for our runners. So they're moving a little bit slower horizontally, but that also makes stuff like jumping over the Hammer Giantess a lot more difficult. Ice will be plus. Did we see an ice scoring? Not something that anybody is... no, yeah. Keywlio's got it equipped. Okay. Ice, not one of the more popular orbs, but definitely useful in a couple of specific situations. So here we have the basement loop for Keywlio. Another interesting thing about the rule set for this year is some of the areas that are flooded could be unflooded, and some of the areas that are usually dry could be flooded. This basement loop in particular has the ability to be flooded with the current rule set. It's not in this seed, so this is going to proceed as normal. And there's good odds that there's going to be progression in here, because there's not so many places our runners could go at this point. Shattered Orb neutral, probably a better bet than Gun. Shattered Orb generally a good seed, a good orb, and even at neutral instead of plus, that's still going to be much better damage than the Gun. Spending some time on killing one of the first little bird cavalries, and then moving on. And there's Teleria. Okay, so this does actually count as progression. Not only is this horizontal speed, this also allows you to make some jumps you wouldn't otherwise be able to make. There's a broken bridge on the left side of the map that our runners are now going to have the ability to pass by. Another unfortunate death for Keywlio. Trying to make those jumps over the Hammer Giantess is not succeeding. He did take that save right before the basement loop, so I guess he was expecting this outcome. But that means he does have to go through the loop again in order to pick up that Teleria attachment, and that's not the kind of thing that you wanna just dodge. Even though it is slow going through the loop if you're not sure what you're gonna get out of it, between the Shattered Orb and the Teleria attachments is absolutely worth it. James now into that room with that Teleria attachment, so we should see things speed up drastically from here. You get a Captain's Cap? Okay. So the Captain's Cap is a decent set of equipment. Equipment overall is something that is... Yep, there it is. Same place as the old coat. Equipment is generally favored not necessarily for its defensive stats, but for its offensive stats. The Captain's Cap has a decent amount of additional damage attached to it, so one of the better helms. There's still a couple of helms that they're going to be on the lookout for in order to replace that, as well as basically anything in their chest slot. Ooh, Kewlio skipping the left side with a breakable wall? That's... Oh no. He's going for the save and then coming back. Okay. Alright. And a good thing, Infernal Flames is a source of fire, potentially relevant once our runners get to the left side of the map. Did skip the Captain's Cap? Oh, his damage is going to suffer as a result. But yeah, the fire source is going to be helpful. There are burnable vines over on the left side of the map, which will remove certain barriers in the present time period if you burn them in the past. This game has causality effects. James, it looked like, say, quit out after checking underneath the Golden Idol location, after finding not anything worthwhile. So that's good, actually. That's a decent time save, not having to backtrack through there. Kewlio making that same run now. This is a location that's actually been fairly valuable for many of the race seeds. In this situation, not exactly. A MP up item or MP refresh and Chaos Rose will cure Chaos. Not that that makes too much of a difference. So this is the broken bridge over on the left side. James just passed it. And once Kewlio finds his way to a warp, we'll probably see Kewlio doing the same thing. So many deaths for Kewlio. In this case, he's now done the... It's almost a time save, though. Death Warp is also a warp, absolutely. So Kewlio heading over to the same place that James is now. I'm gonna cross that bridge and see what goodies you can come up with. James saving and then checking the Cantoran spot is my guess? Yes. So this is the first boss fight we're now seeing for this seed. And we have Azure Queen as Cantoran. The boss randomizer feature is also turned on. And the way that works is any boss can appear in any other boss's location. And they'll be scaled to that location's HP and damage. So in this case, Azure Queen, an earlier boss, is going to have their HP and damage scaled up by virtue of being in a later game boss's position. James is locked in here. So this does make it a little difficult if James can't make it through the boss fight. Because at this point, he has to take the boss fight in order to get access back to the rest of the game. But even odds on this having decent progression as a reward, unless the progression that they're looking for was in fact in that upper banishment cave. Low fight for sure. Water Mask. Oh, okay. That's what James was looking for. That's what James was hoping for. So Water Mask is going to give James access to a bunch of different checks, all of the underwater checks, as well as access through the flooded Lake Serene, well, normal Lake Serene with water in it, over on the left side. So James now has a huge advantage. Kewlio going into that boss fight, so might take a while. Kewlio's damage is going to be slightly reduced from how James was doing, but Kewlio's going to come out with that Water Mask also. Had to be there. It could have been in the upper caves of banishment. That is still possible. Nobody checked there yet. James making his way through Lake Serene now. Not going back to checking any of the other underwater locations. I think he checked the Eel Cave, but it didn't look like he went back for Waterfall. So there might still be some cool progression stuff back there. But for now, just moving forward. There are the tablet. Nice. Again, going to be useful once he makes it to the present. Assuming he makes it to the present. We've been baited before. So there's just it's a fairly linear spot over here. The point of divergence is going to be once we hit the warp room over on the left side. There's the choice between going down into the Maw Caves or heading back up to clean up the upper Lake Serene checks. Fight whoever is currently in the Azure Queen location and burn the rest of the vines. Or burn any of the vines, actually. With no vertical, they wouldn't have had access to the vines over on the right side. James tagging the warp and immediately backing out to go check the upper Lake Serene checks. Yep, makes sense. So he's going to go burn the vines, prepare for the present, and get the rest of the checks in this area, since there really are quite a few up here. It's worthwhile. Without vertical, there is one check in this area that he's going to be orphaning, so it's going to be a bit of a pain to backtrack for that check if that check ends up having anything relevant. Wow, Coolio having a rough time against that Azure Queen. Taking a second, breathe on that continue screen. Get back into it, fight again. You can do it, Coolio. Unfortunately, as was mentioned earlier, Coolio is kind of stuck here. You might normally have the opportunity to go grind some enemies or take a couple of other checks, maybe find something to make the combat easier, but without the Water Mask as the reward from this fight, there's nowhere else for Coolio to go. All of the rest of the map is on the other side of this door. And yeah, the lack of equipment is absolutely hurting here. This is a rough fight, scaled up as it is, and Coolio's still pretty low level. James looks like they found the Time-Worn Warp Beacon? Is it Time-Worn or Modern? Military Hangar Warp. Okay, so James now has access to the present. Which... This is actually kind of a point of divergence from where people would go last year. So, because of the Enter Sandman flag, it's no longer necessary to go through the lab in order to get into the pyramid. Which means that it's distinctly possible that you never have to kill all of the bosses in the past the way that you did in last year's flag set. Which means James has the option of potentially just going to the present and not bothering with the Maw Caves, which would have been an unthinkable play with last year's flag set. Maw would always have been a necessary kill regardless. James making this combat look really good. Still not very powerful weapons, but getting some big hits with that ice spell and doing a great job dodging the projectiles. Coolio, unfortunately, still struggling against the Azure Queen. James now having burned all the vines. Looks like they're going to be heading towards the Caves of Banishment, the Maw boss fight. Oh, no, they made it to the present. Okay, never mind. I wasn't sure where they were going to go from here, but this is I like this choice. This is something different. So James now heading into the present. With the elevator keycards, they have access to quite a few checks in this area. There's still some stuff gated behind security doors that they're not going to have access to. But there are a lot of checks that they can just get right now. And I think the checks here are going to be a bit denser than the checks in the Caves of Banishment. So this is going to be potentially more of a payoff. Coolio having a really rough time with this Azure Queen fight. Oh no. Well, we're going to be watching this for a bit. I think there's not a lot of divergence in what James is going to be doing in the near future. Heading through the available checks here, just cleaning out the Varn de Grey Towers. Using that elevator keycard to its fullest potential. And then from there, he's going to have the choice of heading back to the library. With the tablet, that's probably a good choice. There's still the Maw Caves, and then once through the library, there's also Lake Desolation, the modern area of Lake Serene. Oh, James checking out half of the elevator, and then opting to come back for the Maw Caves. Into the Caves of Banishment now. This is an interesting choice. I think James, it looks like, is banking on there being some vertical access down here in the Maw Caves. And potentially trying to use this to clear out all of the bosses in the past, and then head right from that military hangar warp. Maybe not ever needing to go back to the library or go back to Lake Desolation. I wonder if that's still a holdover from last year's flag set, the mentality that the bosses matter a lot more. Since the library is a pretty good place to get a bunch of checks, especially with that tablet. But this is absolutely a reasonable way to go. If you're banking on some good stuff in the lab, if you're banking on vertical being down here in the caves, then this is a completely reasonable choice to make. Oh, so Kewneo has forfeited the race, just struggling way too much behind the big bird. That's a bummer to hear. Give me 1 second, folks. But I think that is the race. So congratulations to James for his win, and my sympathies to Kewneo for that really, really frustrating circumstance. I fully understand, though, after spending that much time trying to fight that boss and not being able to succeed, like, it's a really rough situation to be in. Kewneo, understandably, not going to be joining us for some post-race commentary. We didn't really get that far into the seed, so I don't know that I have that many questions to ask here. But if James wants in, James is welcome to it. I've sent him the invite. Give me a second to see if he's going to join or. Man, really a rough set of circumstances. This was absolutely a difficult start. No particularly useful combat equipment, and a lot of health on that boss in that location. Very, very difficult fight. All right, we're going to get James coming into the commentary booth for a quick discussion, a quick interview. Definitely a challenging start for this seed. It would have been interesting to see where the rest of it went, but again, I fully understand Kewneo making the decision that he did after being locked behind Azure Queen for as long as he was. That's just incredibly frustrating, and beating your head against that boss for that long and then coming back in for another try must have been difficult. It's just really frustrating. I totally understand. I've been there before. I've had to make similar decisions in seeds. Just really, really rough fights that I wasn't prepared to handle. And, there's other ways to deal with it. You can even restart the seed just from scratch. Knowing what you know about where things are, you can make some different choices. You can maybe farm a bit before going into there, but that's 20 minutes of time lost. That's 30 minutes of time lost. There's very little coming back from a situation like that, especially if the other racer isn't having the problems that you are. Still waiting on James to get invited to the server. James has joined the DE restream, I think, for the post race interview. Okay, all right, so be it. I understand. I'm not mad. So moving on, James is going to be moving into the seeded part of the initial winners bracket. So he's going to be facing Wef Jebster in a future race. And Coolio is going to be facing the loser of Waffle Soup's match, which hasn't been decided yet. Here we go. Hey, welcome.
Hey, Jim.
So I think we're all bummed as a result of that race. It's not... I understand that's not the way that you wanted to win, but congratulations on your win anyway.
I definitely did not want to win that way. I really wanted to see the seed all the way through.
Yeah, the progression was coming pretty slowly, so I think there could have been some really interesting routing decisions later on in the seed.
I'm very curious to see how Coolio was going for the seed.
Yeah, Coolio ended up struggling a bit in some of the early combat. I think he wasn't... it was a rough start. All of the combat tools were really poor in the beginning.
Definitely. Gun minus is just a real kick in the knee.
Mm-hmm. He missed the captain's cap, so he didn't have that extra piece of equipment.
No.
And then Azure Queen was just a hard wall for him.
Yeah. And I ended up one-shotting that. Oh boy, I feel bad now.
Yeah. It is what it is, right? That is definitely a way to win a race.
It's not a good way.
No.
It never feels right. Just to have a forfeit come up out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm. So one question I actually did want to ask you, just from what we saw so far, I think you did make one really interesting routing decision. When you got the modern warp beacon, at that point, the entire map is open for you. You can go to the Maw Cave, you can go to Varndegrade Towers, you can go to the library. How did you decide where to head from there?
Well, I mostly wanted to knock out the tower if I could. I didn't want to go exactly into the library just yet because I know I need to take care of a few things. But it wasn't really in my mind to go there immediately. But honestly, I probably should have.
Okay, so still focused on the past, still focused on the things that you were already clearing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, understandable. All right, well, I think I don't have too much more to say here. Your next round is going to be against Wef Jebster.
It's happening already, huh?
Yeah.
I think I lost Wef the first year around. I didn't enter the second year, so it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah, Wef is definitely a formidable racer. He's been a pillar of the community, heavily involved in the randomizer. I believe he's done some speedrunning as well, so not easy competition for sure.
Oh, definitely. But we'll see how much of orb swapping he's able to pull off.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're all going to be looking forward to that race, and I wish you luck with there as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely try to schedule that as soon as possible.
Great. Happy to hear it. Anything else you want to say? Any shout outs you want to make?
Shout out to BattyMatsIndex, my fellow 100% runner, because I also run 100%.
Right on. And I think that's it for me as well. So let me just say thank you to Speedgaming Live for hosting this tournament. Please follow the runners. I tried to put in the R command in chat, but I'm not sure if it worked. And hang out for future Timespinner Randomizer races. Do we have any more races today? I feel like there's one more coming up, right?
We do have one more race coming up today.
And is that going to be on this channel? Or is that going to be on one of the other channels?
That, I believe, is going to be on Speedgaming 5.
Speedgaming 5, great.
At least
30 minutes on SG5. Great. And that's going to be, people are saying it's going to be Winfei versus Crazy Comics. Is that?
Winfei Maiden.
Very exciting.
I would love to have a run back of a game with her because of what happened the first year when there were technical difficulties.
Oh, rough.
And I waited out until Faye said that she was good to go. So
okay.
I would love to see a run. I would love to see a run without technical difficulties this time.
I think we would all love to see a run without technical difficulties. All right. Well, we're gonna have Winfei Maiden and Crazy Comics up on Speedgaming 5. Wef Jebster and Llama are going to be providing commentary for that race. So it's going to be a banger for sure.
Can't wait for that.
Yep. And I think that's it for us. So thanks again for coming. I hope you all had a good time. I hope you all enjoyed what we had of the race. And definitely check out Speedgaming 5 for some more Timespinner action. See ya, folks.
All right.